Hey homeschool friends, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we are talking books, read aloud books. In specific, books that I would recommend for kiddos that maybe are on the more sensitive side, because my kids definitely are more sensitive. And what I mean by sensitive is that sometimes what they watch, mostly it's what they watch, like movies or shows, but sometimes it is books. What they watch or read may cause them to have nightmares. And I don't want that for my kids. Man, there is so many things they could watch or read that I don't need to have them watch something that is too scary for them, or read something that has either kind of monstrous elements or even kind of like heavy elements like death and things like that. So because of that, in today's video, I'm going to give you some of the books that have worked for my sensitive kiddos. Now, mind you, this is my kids. You might see this list and see some things on here and not want to read them for your kids, and that is totally okay. You are their parent, so you need to decide that. And honestly, being a parent of a sensitive kiddo results in the fact that I have to do more pre-reading. And you probably do too if you are watching this and you have a sensitive kid. But anyway, before I ramble too much about that, let me hop into some good read aloud recommendations. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel if you're new here, or welcome back if you have been coming for a while. Like I said, we are talking about read alouds for sensitive kiddos in today's video. And just for a little bit of context, my kids are 8.5, 7, 4, and 4. So really, these are recommendations for like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. Not above that. I just really haven't gotten there yet. So consider that when you're listening to this list, but let's just hop in. I have like 15 to 20 books here I didn't count, and I'm just going to pull them off the top, so they're in no particular order. But I'm going to start with this book. We loved this book. So this is A World According to Humphrey by Betty G. Burney. These are so cute. It is about a hamster in a classroom, and the book is told from the point of view of Humphrey, the hamster. And it's just so enjoyable. This is the first book. There are a number of other books in the series to pick up, which is one thing I love about finding a book that my kids like, as we can continue on in the series. And so you'll follow Humphrey and the kids as they like learn to take care of him, take him home. There's some conflict between students or some things to solve, but all in all, it's just a very heartwarming, sweet book. So Humphrey is the first one I want to recommend. Next, you guys, this is the best. Heartwood Hotel, A True Home by Kaylee George. This book is so sweet. There's actually 2 more books, which I have since picked up but not read to my kids yet, but I have them. And this is about a little mouse named Mona the mouse, who is stranded. I can't remember exactly what happens, but she comes upon this big tree and enters into the Heartwood Hotel. Like, she is hired on and she becomes a maid and she starts interacting with the guests, and there's certain rules that they have to abide by, and there's this kind of danger outside of the tree. Oh my gosh, it is such a sweet book. Such a sweet book. So that is the second really set of books I'd like to recommend. Another series that my daughter loves. So we didn't really start these until a little bit later, so I would recommend these for kind of more like the 7-year-old and up age range, but these are sweet. So there's Zizzy Cat Capers by Dina Kent. So this, I believe, is, this is the first one. And there's 2 and 3, and my daughter loves them. It's about this cat burglar named Ophelia, who is trying like to be the best cat burglar in the world. There's always these heist competitions. She's always participating, trying to keep her #1 spot. She's competing against her cousin, Pierre, and it's just really cute. She has this sidekick of a fish, and they get into shenanigans. It's just very wholesome and not scary and very entertaining. So I really like those, especially for girls, but my son has also enjoyed those. And another classic would be Mouse and the Motorcycle. And there's more of these that my kids have listened to on audiobook, I believe. And this is just such a sweet story. This was, I think, one of our first read alouds that we did. I might even be able to find a picture of when I was reading this out back, and my twins were like 1 year old, and it was just a sweet memory for me about this little mouse who lives in this hotel, and he ends up meeting this little boy who has this toy motorcycle, and then he steals the motorcycle and goes on these adventures. And there's the common storyline of the mouse trying to escape the humans, but then finding out one of the humans is really nice and wants to keep him as a pet, sort of idea. These ones are classic, and I would definitely say that's a good one to start with, along with this one. Maybe I'll just share with you some of my first ones that I read to my kids when they were like 4 or 5. But this book, you guys, it's My Father's Dragon by Ruth Stiles Gannett. This is actually a bind up of the first 3 books, but we loved it. There are pictures and action. It's great for little boys, but again, my daughter liked it too. It's about this boy who travels to this island where this dragon is being kept captive, and he has to go about the island and try and find him and save him, sort of idea. It's just so sweet. It's so sweet. And definitely not scary in any way. Okay, next I have these books. So we only have one, but we get these from the library all the time. They're the Zoe and Sassafras books. This one is Reagans and Marshmallows, but there are so many of them. They're very short, very quick, but Zoe is this like sweet girl who wants to be a scientist. She gets involved in all these little adventures and taking care of different animals and creatures, and they're just really sweet and fun. And so I would definitely recommend these for a more sensitive kiddo, along with this book. Oh, I just love all these books, you can tell. This is The Very, Very Far North by Dan Bar-El. So this is the first book. I think there's 2. And so this is about a group of animals in the Arctic and how they get along and how they make friendships and how they grow. And there isn't like a big adventure plot or anything like that. It is more about their relationships and their day-to-day life and overcoming different things. And so it is just a really cute book. Again, lots of pictures. It's a bigger size read aloud, but again, it's perfect for the younger ages and the sensitive kiddos. Another book that I think is good for sensitive kiddos, but this might be borderline, is Poppy. So Poppy is about this little mouse who lives in Deerwood Forest or something like Dimwood Forest. And there's this owl, this scary owl who kind of rules the forest, and he rules the mice, and they have to like ask permission for things. And then something happens and Poppy has to kind of make it right and make it better and save his family, and there's always the big bad owl. So I guess this one I would say is borderline, depending on how your kiddos take like more of an intrigue, suspense-filled story, but it is about animals, so that I feel like that helps. But anyway, we love Poppy and Ragweed and some of the other ones that go in this series as well. Okay, another classic that my kids love are the Boxcar Children. So we read this first one out loud, and then they have since listened to the audiobook for all of the rest. There's like 100 or something. It's about these siblings who in this first book live in a boxcar, and then from there they go on and solve all these mysteries. And they're just entertaining, straightforward, heartfelt sort of books about siblings, and it's definitely set with some older language and things like that, but it doesn't detract from the mystery and the setting. So both my kids love those. And then I have these books. Okay, so I love the Lulu books. We've read a couple of them. This one's the Lulu Walks the Dog. I think we've read Lulu the Dog. There's a Dog by the Seaside, and that was another sweet one. And these are really fun. They have to do with this girl named Lulu who just loves animals, and she's trying to kind of save animals, or in this case, walk some dogs. And they're just sweet stories, short stories, but good read alouds that I would recommend for more sensitive kiddos. Okay, and then this next book, I love this book. It is sweet and there's some funny parts. I remember my kids laughing out loud at some of these stories because it's a book where every chapter is a different story about this girl named Anna who lives in Africa. Her whole family lives in Africa, and it's really fun. It's a really cute book. Another book that my daughter loved is Mindy, Kim, and the Lunar New Year Parade. At first I thought this was more of a reader, but it worked really well as a read aloud. It's just about this girl who wants to go to the parade, and she learns a little bit more about her heritage, and it's just really cute and sweet. And so my daughter really liked that. I think there are more Mindy Adventures, so those are great. Okay, I have 2 books here that I would recommend to sensitive kiddos, with the disclaimer that they do involve death. And so it just kind of depends on where your kids are at and how sensitive they are to that. But there's a classic of Charlotte's Web. I mean, it's Charlotte's Web. I don't need to explain too much about this story, but it is a heartwarming story, well written. I feel like even with the old language, my kids were able to really attach to the characters and care about the storyline and feel sad when Charlotte died, although like I think I cried more when Charlotte died than my kids did. But it's just a really sweet book. And the same goes for this one, where I cried more than my kids did. And this is Adventures with Waffles by Maria Parr. There is a chapter in here where my kids laughed out loud. I mean, they talked about this scene for days. They still talk about this scene and how funny they thought it was. And it's about these two kids, I think they're in Norway, and they have these antics, these two like neighboring kids, they're best friends, and they get into trouble, and then she has to move away to the city, and he's sad about that, and all these things happen. But there is a part where the grandmother, that's where the waffles come from, does pass away. And so, spoiler alert, but that's okay. Just know that. And it was sad for me. Again, I cried a bunch. My kids could handle it. So we loved this book. It was one of my kids' favorites from last year. Okay, so we love these books too. So this is a Dick Keene-Smith book. So he writes Babe the Gallant Pig. He wrote another one about a mouse, and we read those too. And so this is called The Water Horse. And my kids love this. He typically writes very short books, pictures, and this has involved these kids who found this egg and it hatched in their bathtub, and it turned out to be a water horse, or almost kind of the Loch Ness monster idea, and they keep it in a pond and they feed it, and it's just a really sweet story. It's not scary in any way, even though that sounds like it could be. It's not. It's these kids trying to take care of this animal that hatched and then release it into the wild. It's a sweet story. Okay. Oh, we did love this book. Okay. The Wild Robot by Peter Brown and The Wild Robot Returns. We read both. We love both. They're just a sweet story about this robot named Roz, who is, for some reason, dropped off on an island, but she's not broken, and she starts to interact with all the animals who don't trust her, but then she starts to try and figure out how they work, and she finds herself emotionally attaching even though she's a robot. And it's just sweet. It's just about friendship and acceptance and all these things, but we really enjoyed it. Again, there's nothing scary that goes on with that. It's really friendship focused, so it's perfect for my kiddos. Okay, here's a book that is, again, something I got for my daughter when she was a little bit older, like 7. Not scary, but it's a good first mystery type of a book. If you find that your kids are maybe into mysteries, they like Boxcar Children, these books are so much fun. They are the Maisie Hitchens series. It's this girl who wants to be a detective. I think these are a little bit on the historical side. You can kind of tell by how she's dressed, but this one's called The Case for the Stolen Sixpence. So it's book 1, and she goes through finding all these clues and figuring out what's going on, and it's just sweet stories. My daughter has listened to a lot of the audiobooks of these, and we're collecting more of them for her. So that's a good one if your kiddos are thinking they might be into mysteries. That's a good one to read aloud. Oh, and we're reading this right now. So this is Henry Huggins by Beverly Cleary. I'm loving the character of Henry and just the antics he gets into with his dog, and just the lessons that the kids are learning about taking care of their stuff, about being responsible and having to earn money, and it's just cute. I've been really enjoying it. So that's another good one. And then these ones are also really sweet. So this is Frankie Sparks and the Class Pet. Actually, I'm not sure. Oh, there's another Frankie Sparks. So this is one my daughter loved, but we read it out loud, and my son liked it too. It really had more to do with like classrooms. It depends if your kids can resonate with that at all, but it's about a class pet, and the class has to vote on it, and they all have to come up with ideas for what would be the best pet. And it goes through Frankie as she thinks she has the right answer, and she's mad at her friends, and then she realizes that she has to think about things from other people's points of view. And so it's some good character development in this book. So it's another good one and potential series to continue with. And then I personally love Little House books. So Little House in the Big Woods is the only one I've read out loud. We're kind of at the beginnings of Little House on the Prairie, but my kids liked it. I feel like they really enjoyed that like historical glimpse into the past and what it would have felt like to be the only ones there, and their dad has to hunt for their food, their mom has to grow their food, they have to be extra helpful with the chores and things like that. So it feels very wholesome and sweet, and definitely fine for sensitive kiddos, or at least it was fine for my sensitive kiddos. And then I think this might be the last one. Let me double check. Yes, this is the last one of my list. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle. This is such a fun book, you guys. I know some people just don't like it, but I really enjoyed it, and my kids really enjoyed it. It's about this woman named Mrs. Piggle Wiggle who is like got a knack with children, and she understands them, and then these parents have problems with their children, like my child just always grabs toys, or my child is really selfish, and they send them to Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, and she has these like ideas for how to help their character and their behavior, and it's just really funny. My kids thought this was hysterical, and we still reference some of the kids and like the grabber backers and all these things. You'll understand if you've read it, but this is just a really sweet book. Again, nothing too alarming in these books. So yes, that's like 15-ish books, but most of them are series, so that's wonderful. So you definitely can go from there if your kiddos really resonate with a certain book. But I hope this was helpful, and I hope it was encouraging to you that even if your kids are more on the sensitive side, there are books out there for them. There are things you can read aloud that they can really enjoy, that you can really enjoy, that don't have to be super old classic type books, but can be kind of a good mix of modern and classic, or at least my list is. So I hope you enjoyed my book stack, and if you have any others to add to the recommendations list, please comment down below and we can kind of get a growing list together so we can all have more options for our sensitive kiddos. But otherwise, that is what I have for the video. If you liked it, found it useful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want to, and otherwise I will see you guys in the next homeschool video. All right, take care.